Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. I'm your host Joel, and with me as always is my gay co-host.
You
can't argue, you don't know what that word means.
Yeah, you're right. Brian, hi.
Hi Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So this week we are going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 1, The Freshman.
Yeah, we are. So this was first released on October 5th, 1999. It was written and directed by Joss Whedon. And here is your Buffy Ann summary.
Boo boo.
I read this in advance. It's actually coherent. I'm very upset. Buffy, Willow and Oz arrive at university, where Buffy feels at sea. She dislikes her control freak roommate, Kathy. She meets her psychology professor, Maggie Walsh, and Maggie's TA, Riley. She is mocked and beaten by Sunday, a vampire whose band prey on unhappy students. Sunday steals her stuff, smashing the class protector parasol, and Buffy gets angry and kills her. There are commandos on campus tracking vampires. See, that's serviceable.
I feel very rough around the edges for always considering her class protector gift as an umbrella as opposed to a parasol.
I know. Parasols are for sun and umbrellas are for rain, I think is the distinction.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Sun, vampires.
Oh, good point.
That whole thing. What's wrong with that?
Okay.
Significant. So for our bronze banter this week, we wanted to talk about two films which we watched like saps for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Which is Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise and Before Sunset with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy.
Yeah, two of a trilogy that may be finished, but it's hard to say. So Before Sunrise was released in 1995. It is a movie about about Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke meeting by chance on a train. They don't know each other, and they decide to get off together to explore Vienna in Europe. The whole film is just a long conversation between two people who don't know each other, getting to know each other, having some romantic feelings towards each other, not knowing how to... What's up, bugger? Not knowing what to do about that feelings, and... parting ways at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It's really good. It stands up very well for a movie from 1995. It's beautifully shot and it's great. We were watching it because, it was Valentine's Day and they're romantic, sappy movies. They're also some of my favorite movies of all time, to be honest. But
Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are babies.
They are actual babies. But also importantly, Joel got me the Criterion Collection set of the Blu-rays for our anniversary a while back. Which is so there you go. That's why we were watching them. And then Before Sunset is 9 years later. We shouldn't spoil them actually, should we? I
always say spoiler wise, it's not what happened, it's how you get there. So. Yeah,
true. So it was released in 2004 or 2003 or 2004, and it's basically set 9 years after the original movie, and they have a similar situation where they are walking around Paris having a conversation, just the two of them. It's actually real time, the second movie specifically, and you they talk about what's happened in the last 9 years. That sounds really sappy or really weird, but it's like quite they're quite philosophical films, and they're quite discursive. I was watching a video essay about Before Sunset specifically the other day because a guy was talking about how he felt when he watched it originally. It felt like a directorless movie. It felt very like it just happens. But it's actually incredibly intentional. I mean, just the structure of it, the plotting, the setting up of, dramatic tension and relief thereof, and setting up new questions and dramatic tension exists within it. And I was like, oh, that's actually really smart. Because, it is. It's just on an incredibly small scale and having to be implied in a very subtle way.
Yeah, I think crucially what it is in both cases, it's people being more honest and more discursive because they're in what feels like stolen moments.
Yeah.
In both cases, there's kind of in both the first two films, there's a sense of a countdown because there's a flight or a train leaving, that they have a limited amount of time together. They're away from their normal lives, their normal families and all that. So, it's a classic thing where people are maybe more themselves outside what they feel, the normal flow of time. That's just very engaging. I specifically, which I... unfortunately consider it a high compliment. Having seen these films a number of times before, I had my Switch ready to play a game while we were watching along. I just never picked it up because it's just really engaging and very funny, and I did not intend to do that. So
no, they're like old gloves you can fit on. They're for me, they're such comforting movies. I think I watched them first when I was 15, maybe 14, and I love them. But okay, and most triply importantly is that there was another movie released then in 2014, 13, 14, I think, called Before Midnight, which is, again, 9 years after that, to discuss, or to look at where these two people have gotten to in the meantime, which I'm definitely not going to spoil. So definitely, if you haven't watched them, go off and watch Before Sunrise and Sunset, and remember that when you're watching Before Sunset, that ending was all anyone had to go on for a decade.
Yeah.
But like, we went to see Before Midnight together, which was really nice. In the Lighthouse in Dublin, which is a cinema. It was great. It was lovely. It's a really, really strongly good movie, the third one. The first movie is quite... it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But the two other movies, I think, are like genuine masterpieces.
Sure.
Richard Linklater is just a great, great director. He also did School of Rock and Bernie. Bernie being that one with Jack Black where he's the butler who inherits that woman's fortune and probably killed her. But more importantly, he directed things like Boyhood, which was stunning, obviously, and Dazed and Confused, and some other movie that's quite good. Anyway.
Quite a broad career in some ways.
Yeah, he's great. High Fidelity? No, I didn't direct High Fidelity. I'm going crazy. What am I talking about? Stupid.
So in Before Sunrise, Julie Delpy's character is on her way back to Paris for her university classes in the Sorbonne.
La Sorbonne.
La Sorbonne. And similarly, in this episode, Buffy's about to start her university classes in La University of Sunnydale.
Yeah.
LA University of Sunnydale.
No, it's yeah.
I'm doing a French thing.
Okay. Getcha. So, this is the season 4 of Buffy. It's contentious. People feel very up and down about season 4 of Buffy. I think the consensus on season 4 is that it does struggle to find its feet in a new setting. It has such a distinct, brilliant setting to start with. You know, the monsters in the high school is a classic for a reason. The monsters on the campus it's a little bit more
diffuse
for sure. Just as the campus itself is more diffuse, it's less pokey, and you our cat's like
full of beans.
He's full of beans. Yeah, we'll ignore him. But just like when they walk into the library, and I presume Buffy's expecting something similar to their library, where it was pokey, nice, it was just for them. They walk into like a monolithic, huge
cavernous really,
room.
Like,
yeah.
What
the fuck?
Why put me?
Yeah, please. But yeah, so like just like that, that library just kind of indicates how much of a Buffy has. Like, you know, this episode could be titled Big Fish so easily, you know. Or Big Pond, probably more appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a big fish in an enormous pond. It's a reframing. It's a difficult thing to do. It definitely has adolescent growing pains. And it's necessary, like, to try and pull the lens back a bit from what was which we always said was a very, very tight setting in the first 3 seasons. Even when they ventured to other parts of Sunnydale had a almost village-like quality to it.
Absolutely.
And they're now 5 miles away in UC Sunnydale, and I have that right, don't they? UC Sunnydale.
UC Sunnydale, yeah.
So yeah, it's a place setting episode, and which actually weirdly I think it mostly resembles Welcome to the Hellmouth in that respect.
Okay, sure. It's approach to introductions and, like, you know, people walking, talking in a new location kind of thing. Yeah,
just introducing a lot of new people and concepts and frameworks, whereas the openers of season 2 and 3 had aspects of that, but they also had quite strong emotional arcs that they were kind of feeding into as well. The emotional arc isn't as much here because I think there is, as we said, kind of a very natural tying off point at the end of season 3 where obviously the emotional stuff is continuing, but there's nothing burning for Buffy at the moment.
No.
So it feels more like that, where they're like, here's a new set, here's a new cast of characters, here's new stakes and all that kind of stuff. Considering the fact that the most significant arc of the season around the initiative is really only like teased in an after credit sequence essentially at the end of the episode.
Though, I mean, I was just thinking about that it's very early for a like season long thread to be threaded, if you get me, as in like mostly in Buffy. So if you think about season 2, season 2, like Angelus doesn't come along until episode like 12. And then season 3, the mayor doesn't come along until episode like 4 or 5 or something, you know? Sure,
but what I think is quite common is they tend to seed early on the red herring is not fair, but basically the
buzzword for the season,
the evil that will trigger the actual evil.
Yeah, okay.
They see, say, Mr. Trick / Faith. They see kind of Spike or introduced to all that kind of stuff. And I would say arguably the actual villain of this season isn't the Initiative, it's Adam.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's a shift about halfway through where it goes from kind of Maggie and the Initiative, and these people in theory are going to be the boss in the last episode. The shift focuses entirely on something which isn't introduced in this episode, which is Adam. Yeah. So, but no, I agree. It's you can't continue pulling that trick of burying your league so deep into a season. So I think they have to try, and they need something to entice people to be like, okay, military stuff, kind of science fictional stuff, all that kind of stuff.
So a couple of what am I trying to say here?
Programming notes.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So Mark Field, I was reading there, suggests that this season the writers don't get to fully obtain or kind of write the thing that they intend to write. So there's some structural abnormalities to the season, and that's why it feels so disjointed in parts of this for the season. He doesn't say so about this episode, but if you think about it, beer bat, that kind of stuff. I think that might have been like what do you call it when a network has a department that says what you can and you can't show? Yeah,
the standards and practices.
Exactly. I think they influence a lot of this season, and it does mess with the structure and the thematic structure of the season.
They're paying more attention to Buffy now that it's kind of gotten some acclaim.
I would imagine so, yeah. So also probably coming off the two quite controversial episodes in the last season. Okay, yeah. So some interesting just like tidbits, just ate the gate. So that was Pedro Pascal as Eddie.
Yeah, so incredibly dweebish.
His first on screen, or his first time acting on screen.
Pedro Pascal.
Oh, Pascal. Sorry, Pedro Pascal. I'm thinking of Steve Pascal.
Pedro Pascal, better known for Good Wife, for Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones, and what you might not realize is actually the main actor in The Mandalorian.
He is the Mandalorian, yeah.
I think you need to know that though. So I think he's overwhelmingly most well known for is probably Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Interestingly, that was David Boreanaz for like half of the shot. Buffy's in the bronze. She thinks she sees Angel across the room. It is David Boreanaz until it turns around and it's a lookalike. But yeah, what I mainly wanted to go through was just to do a quick cursory go through of the bit actors in the episode. So, Kathy, the actor there, whose name I didn't actually take down, but she's in an episode of 6 Feet Under. She's the one with the gay opera death guy.
Yeah. Kathy's her roommate.
Her name's Patty in it. Yeah, Kathy's her roommate. Going to be more important in the next episode. But I couldn't remember who she was in that episode, so I'm going to have to rewatch it just to find out. Professor Walsh, okay. She was nominated for an Oscar.
Really?
Yeah, so she was nominated for an Oscar for Places in the Heart, which is a Depression era movie, Depression era set in the Depression era. But it's a Sally Fields movie, and it's the one that Sally Fields won the second Oscar for. So she first won it for Coal Miner's Daughter, which is the country musician Loretta Lynn, I want to say.
Lurleen Lumpkin,
of course, biopic. But this is the one that she won, and she said, or people often misquote her as having said, "You like me, you really like me." I think she said something like, "Oh, you can't deny it this time. You guys definitely like me," because she was taking her second Oscar in 2 successive years. And more interestingly, sorry, I took her name down. Did I say it already? It's Lindsay Krause, anyway.
This is Kathy's actress.
No, this is Professor Walsh.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry, we're talking Professor Walsh.
Yeah. But also interestingly, her daughter is Zosia Mamet. So she played Shoshana in Girls.
Oh, really? Yes, that is interesting.
And do you remember we loved her. She was also in United States Tower back in the day, which is an odd show that I don't think anyone really watched, but had an incredible performance by Hereditary, what's her name? Toni Collette, yeah. But more recently, she was in that episode of You're the Worst that we loved, where she goes back to her hometown to reconnect with that girl who she had cancer or something.
Yeah.
And the girl's like, we weren't
friends. You just
fabricated. That was her, Heidi. And the last programming note for the actors in this episode is the woman who played Olivia, whose name I also didn't take down, but she's of Igbo descent, and I did a bit of reading into Igbo culture because I don't know much about it, and very interesting. But she presented on TV3 3 days a week in like the 2008 time.
The Irish TV channel, TV3.
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah. In Ireland AM. So between like 7 and 10 a.m. every morning. Just
fascinating.
Yeah, there you go.
I always liked, even though Olivia's such
Apparently he's also Anthony Stewart Head's actual friend in real life.
Yeah, that would make sense. I always liked Olivia, even though she's such a passing character. She just like comes very fully formed.
Yeah, she's stunningly beautiful as well.
She absolutely is, but she implies as much about kind of Giles's like life outside of Sunnydale as Ethan Rain does, and I think brings that texture in a way that's really, really fascinating.
The ease with which she refers to him as Ripper is also very interesting. She's like, "Oh yeah, had to come visit Ripper,"
and that don't do that.
Had to come visit Ripper. Trumpets and clumpets, yoy hoy hoy, and we love the Queen.
This is what we feel when we hear Dave Boreanaz trying to do an Irish accent. Yeah.
You know, hi, I'm English. Look, there's a country. Shall we invade it? Shall we steal its culture? Let's.
Quite very droll, Brian. But I love Olivia's line where she says, "Let me just go slip into something less comfortable." It's very effortless.
It is, and she just looks great. Sorry, I feel like I've really distracted the whole structure of this. So so the whole theme of the episode is essentially what I was going to say is just about the season overall. While it does have some bum notes, Beer Bad being often referred to as the worst episode of Buffy, I think I might agree. We'll find out. There are incredible episodes. So most notably for most people is Hush. Which is just obviously incredibly, incredibly well written. And
we've discussed this. We're going to try and approach Hush with a fresh eye.
Because I think Hush is probably the episode of Buffy I've seen the most.
Yeah.
Because I was terrified by it when I was younger. No doubt. It's incredibly well written. It's incredibly well directed. But like it has lost some of its power for me because I have seen it so much. And because I'm so... Yeah, exactly. Because I'm so familiar with it. Other obvious examples, Restless being probably in my top 5 favorite episodes of Buffy because it's batshit crazy.
I'd say Restless is one of my favorite episodes of television.
Yeah, easily. This Hero's Girl, obviously when Faith wakes up again, that two-parter, really, really good. Something Blue, which is the episode where Giles gets turned into the demon.
Yeah.
Which is genuinely like a good episode.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I haven't seen it in a long time now. And Fear itself, so fucking good.
The Halloween episodes are bangers.
Yeah.
Generally, and that's one I find very memorable.
This is maybe my favorite Halloween episode.
Yeah, it's very good.
Otherwise, I mean, Primeval, not that bad, but obviously a very subpar season conclusion kind of thing.
Comparatively, yeah. Although I do find the fight with Adam that they have thrilling. I found it thrilling at the time.
Yeah, and I found when I watched it when I was like maybe 17, when I rewatched it when I was 17, I found that scene with them all, like, you know, Buffy being the body and all of them, etc. I found that very affecting. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. What was I going to say on that point? One of the things I was very aware of as a slightly older person now, watching the episode, is an element of watching Buffy and shows like this and this media that came out of America in the 90s and the early 2000s, which is crucial to our interpretation of it and which won't be there for American audiences, is that everything she does on campus is completely foreign and arcane to us in terms of how our university system works and our third level system.
I think we're especially unused to it because we went to college in Trinity College Dublin, which is a really beautiful campus, but it's incredibly city bound. Yeah. So unlike most colleges are set off a good bit off the center of a city. Or if they're in a city, it's usually in kind of like upstairs in a building somewhere. Yeah. Whereas this is like the Trinity campus is very unusual, and it's not sprawling. Like it's sprawling only in the sense that there are like buildings outside of the main campus.
Yeah. It's not sprawling like by any measure. It's not, and it's enclosed by a wall, and it's in the centre of the city, so there's nowhere for it to go.
I feel like UCD, which is another Dublin college, I think that might be more similar to that kind of American campus feel.
See, it is.
I've never been on UCD.
Fascinatingly, that's what you focused on in terms of the look and feel and the layout of the campus. Whereas the thing I find most estranging about it is their curriculum.
Okay.
The way that people are like, oh, I'm going to do intro to psych and maybe I'll take pop culture because I need a science credit. Because the vast majority of third level courses in Ireland are
incredibly designed,
incredibly specific. So you're doing English literature, that is all you're doing. You're doing a very specific rung of modules. If you're lucky, you might get to choose between 2 optional ones in your first year. But this sense of
we only chose optional stuff in our second year.
Yeah, and that stuff has changed and has become broader. And in some universities, there is more choice in some courses, but still, I think compared to the American system, this broad curriculum, general entry kind of thing does not exist in a lot of European countries.
It seems like there's a lot of like a really heavy workload as well in the US systems. Like there's just, you have to, for a course, you go home and you read a ton and you write a ton. Whereas the Irish system is very much like you go up and you read a ton, hopefully, and you come back with like a very well put together essay at the end of the course. It's
actually something that I find this often portrayed in American portrayals of the UK and Irish system, these small group classes, as unusual, and they are like our we have large lectures, but we do have much more focus on these tutorial, maybe 5, 6, 7 people, kind of thing. And also just things like the majority of people in US systems often living on campus, the idea of a cafeteria where there's a meal plan you sign up to, and obviously the sorority and the fraternity system. It looks like something out of I don't know, like out of Lord of the Rings for us to look at it from a distance. It does not exist.
No, they tried. There was a fraternity that got set up in our college recently, briefly, and it was like the source of like much like discussion and like very much heavily rejected. Knights at the Campanile, that was it called, wasn't it? No, actually, so that was at the sports thing. The
Knights of Campanile is a pre-existing and still existing, US aping sports society, and they were the people who were most susceptible to being targeted by an existing Greek chapter in America who wanted to set up a chapter in Ireland. But there's a lot of overlap there, basically, people trying to act like they're in films from the US from the 80s. But like, so I'm watching this now, I need to parse all of that and get to a point where I kind of understand what she's even talking about, to see how it relates to her, So I think, and that's a real thing with media for Irish people, because so much of it came from the US. You're watching your Simpsons, and when people are talking about their 401k and their GPA, none of that means anything to us, as we have to try and interpret it. So like, this episode was just full of that kind of stuff, and then you have also the distancing thing of it being the 90s.
Still in the 90s.
Still the 90s. So like, when she can't find a building on campus, I'm like, oh shit, she actually can't find it unless she finds a map somewhere or someone who can show her. I don't know, it's just there's an oddness to that, and an anachronism that I find really just, I don't know, haunting. I don't know why.
So one of the things I was reading in our book, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Philosophy, Fear and Trembling in Sunnydale, in an essay which had an absolutely wild title, Buffy Goes to College, Adam Murders to Dissect, Education and Knowledge in Postmodernity.
This is the title?
Yeah, and it's by Toby Daspit. But it basically is just talking generally, and I felt so betrayed, Joel, because I looked up the freshmen in the index, and I was like, oh, there's only one reference, that's fine, I'll just go read that and just leave it. But then I saw this essay and I was like, this has to mention the episode of Freshmen, because like obviously this episode is the most emblematic of colleges here. This is the college episode. Yeah. And I was like, this is a whole essay about this episode, and they didn't refer to it in the index, and I was like, that is awful. How dare. But yeah, the essay refers to Terry Eagleton, who's a British literary theorist, but we'd have read him a bunch in college. He does really he's very accessible literary theory. And Oisin, my friend, met him one time, and he sent Oisin a Christmas card one time.
Oh, your friend, critically acclaimed published author?
He is actually critically acclaimed. Yeah, that's so funny. Essentially, the essay kind of indicates that the structure of this season and the seasons after this reflects postmodernity. So postmodernism, a literary concept, literary after modernism. Modernism being the literary and artistic movement at the beginning of the 20th century, with the likes of Joyce. People don't always include Joyce, but or Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot. Those would be the modernists.
Interestingly, a course that Buffy was considering and rejected taking in this episode was the modern novel. The modern novel,
you're right. And then postmodernity, basically having modernism having looked at psychological realism and while wider representations of thought processes, stream of consciousness, stuff like that. Postmodernism then goes ahead and says that nothing means anything and stuff like that. But the essay says, Buffy illuminates many of these challenges, particularly as they concern knowledge, epistemology, and offers some alternatives to the danger inherent in modernist educational viewpoints. Some of the more prominent postmodern features of Buffy the Vampire Slayer include its analysis of the potential dangers of reason and science, its explorations of the ambiguous, chaotic natures of reality and identity, and its positioning of possibilities for knowledge construction, hyphenated almost, that reject modernist attempts to channel and control learning. So that's all very interesting, I think. Have you read Of Human Bondage?
If I did, it was a very long time ago.
Yeah, I read it when I was about 15. It's M. Somerset Maugham. It's a buildings-roman.
Yeah.
So
it's
a
Eddie's favourite book in this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Coming of age novel. Eddie refers to it as his comfort blanket. And as always, we have to presume that Joss Whedon is not writing in literary references willy-nilly, exactly. So, Of Human Bondage generally is about a boy who's born with clubfoot. He's kind of rejected by his peers, but he's very, very good, very good intellectually. He eventually
very good brain.
Good brain on him. He eventually decides to go into seminary, become a priest or something, but takes some time out and ends up rejecting his religious background because of the kind of the new ideas that are coming to him. And he also, what's his name again? I remember this. Philip something. It's Philip something, I can't remember now. Philip Cruz? No. Anyway, but he tries to then find a new philosophy, something to fill in the gaps that he's experiencing and the lack of identity he's experiencing. And the human bondage of the title is kind of like the limits of human freedom and freedom of thought and that kind of postmodern search for identity, even though it's not a postmodern novel. And eventually settling on choosing the mundane over the existential inconclusion or lack of conclusion,
Sure.
A question mark haunts him, so he leaves it and he decides, he wants to have a mundane life, wife and children, stop questioning this shit, basically. So, it's been seen as a critique of that kind of existential thought, or maybe not a critique, but an exploration. And I think Mark Fields suggests that there's no
uncertainty about its relevance to this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Eddie is frozen in time through becoming a vampire. He gets vammed after Buffy becomes friends with him, which is really sad, actually.
Yeah.
And Buffy, instead of, rejecting staying in her high school perspective, and instead of clasping onto a safety blanket of college, going home, the bronze, etc., she decides to embrace change and search for new meaning.
No, absolutely, and I think it's definitely reflected in, obviously, the protagonist of On Human Bondage wants to become a priest and goes into a seminary.
I can hear the joke coming. Go on.
And in this episode, you have Eddie becomes a vampire and goes into a cemetery.
It's true.
That's what I was thinking about while you were explaining that really complex concept. I was like, how can I make this joke work?
I'm glad to hear it.
I didn't get there. He didn't die in a cemetery.
So one of the nice things about this episode is that Xander is not awful. Yeah,
no, I think you observed, and I think it's very very accurate, that we're moving towards the end of the season where Xander's role is to be the heart of the unit, essentially.
So in Primeval, the season conclusion, to some degree, the conclusion of the season arc, Willow performs a spell whereby, and if you are worried about spoilers, listen to another podcast, but whereby Buffy is the body, and they all combine all four of their powers into one, so that
their strengths,
so that Willow becomes the spirit,
the will, essentially.
I think it's the spirit.
Yeah, it is the spirit. Yeah.
Giles becomes the head.
Yeah, the mind. Yeah,
the mind. Sorry, and Xander becomes the heart. And they together, I think they called in the power of the first Slayer to do so. Yeah, right? So
the reason why the first Slayer attacks them in Restless is because they have tapped into the power of the Slayer, the first Slayer specifically, and that's an affront to it. But so we have Xander moving towards. I do say to his credit, and I think we've talked about this, that has always been his role within the group. It's just he has had to grow into it and lose some of his rough edges. But this is him appearing in this episode really late in the episode, like quite late.
At Buffy's nadir.
At Buffy's nadir, exactly. And they have what's actually a genuine interaction.
Yeah.
A funny and a charming interaction.
It's genuinely funny as well, yeah.
Yeah. Is laying the groundwork for, him being that component and genuinely being able to bolster people. And I think with the lessons he learned in the Zeppo and the episodes after that, and obviously the nth degree of that being the end of season 6, where he actually aborts an apocalypse with his ability to connect.
But he tells Buffy that, whenever he's worried or whenever he's scared and isn't sure what to do, he just thinks, what would Buffy do? Then he says, "You're my hero." And it's just like very plain spoken and very lovely.
Yeah.
He also has he says Avengers Assemble. There he's like, we should, shouldn't we Avengers Assemble so like we can get the troops together. Which is very funny because obviously Joss Whedon went ahead and directed and wrote the Avengers 2011. Yeah. And never included the phrase Avengers Assemble in it.
And not until the end of the.
Well, he didn't write that.
Yeah, true. I'm just saying it's not in the thing until the end of it. Yeah. No, absolutely. What I meant to say when we were talking about Ellie there briefly, and his very sad story around kind of basically that people disappear every year and no one goes looking for them because they assume they couldn't hack it essentially. But it leads to Buffy saying, in an incredibly unfunny and direct way, when he discusses on human bondage, "I'm not really into porn," which is like one of the most unvarnished lines that has ever been in a Buffy episode.
And then she's like, feels like she might be uncool for not watching porn, and then she's like, "I'm trying to cut back."
Like, I'm uncomfortable. Yeah.
It was so good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the actual threat in this episode.
Sure.
Such as it is. So we have a set of kind of vampire stoners led by Sunday, who's straight out of kind of Claire's Accessories.
Straight out of Asha.
Straight out of Asha. That is a deep cut from the top floor of Stephen's Green Shopping Centre for anyone who remembers that. But she is basically leading this gang of college dropout vampires who are taking these kids' stuff and feigning their abandonment / kind of suicide. Really is kind of something what someone was implied. And she is not a danger. Like, ultimately she is not. She is a young vampire who is kind of an irritating, almost like mean girl wannabe kind of thing. But she does, she goes overpower Buffy. She suggests that she breaks / seriously hurts her arm, and is just getting the better of Buffy in a really embarrassing way, essentially. And as we've discussed before, she's able to do this because Buffy is at her emotional low point. She's doubting herself. She's doubting her ability to react to assess situations intelligently. And Buffy's like getting shouted at by incredibly rude lecturers. She doesn't know where she's going.
That guy was awful.
He really was an asshole.
It was very notable that it was a pop culture studies lecture, which Joss Whedon has to have been aware at the time that like people were starting to write about Buffy academically. In pop culture fields. And the pop culture lecturer was like, this is not just about, watching TV and getting credit for it. Or looking down on pop culture. And you blonde girl, Buffy somewhere, get out, leave, flee my classroom. But everyone else kind of has their place on campus. Willow is flying. She's making a log of overtly sexual metaphors about knowledge being spurted into her awaiting mental orifices and all this kind of stuff. And so I've always really crystallized that this villain in this episode, Sunday, is able to get the better of Buffy because Buffy is so emotionally weak. And when Buffy is emotionally weak or vulnerable, she is manifested physically because the Slayer does not have physically grotesquely huge muscles. Do you know what I mean? Like that if you ever really think about the physics there, the strength that she displays has to come from some magical dimension or some magical force if we're going to talk about fantasy physics. So she does get weaker when she doubts herself more, and then by the end of the episode, Xander, in a very literal sense, recharges the Slayer and repowers her emotionally to the extent that her arm hurts, but she's now able to beat the shit out of her with it. And she's able to quip again. Her powers of speech very much go when she's broken, and she it's marked that when she's back in form, her language centers reappear. She's able to quip, be casual and stuff. I read a theory online. Someone on IMDb was asking, put in a question, because you can do that thing where it's question and answers on IMDb. Someone asked, why did Buffy get overpowered so easily by this? And I was like, duh, it's metaphorical. And it's all about Buffy's the importance of Buffy, the character, not Buffy the Slayer. And the response was, well, as we'll find out in the next episode, Kathy is draining her energy.
Oh, that's a good point, actually, yeah.
And I was like, oh, someone's missed the point.
No, they definitely missed the point, but like sometimes, like occasionally I do think, like, am I thinking too hard about this? which is poison for a podcast. And you have Sunday breaks her, as you mentioned, her class protector parasol, and it's very much meant to be like, you're not in high school anymore, etc. But like, funnily enough, by the end of the episode, like, Buffy's resolution is, this is kind of like high school, which is not untrue, is that things are scaled, but they're not alien, you know?
Yeah.
And that the tools, the transferable skills, as we would say in work, that you have can apply to a range of scenarios. I will say that something we're all zoning on how Buffy feels. Boo-hoo, Buffy Summers, etc. In this episode.
But Willow's having the time of her life.
I love how well Willow's doing. I think she looks great. I think her hair is great.
Don't love her hair.
I like her hair. I think she's showing confidence. I think she has a look that she's happy with, and she is in her element. And she's talking about how you had to steal learning in school and it was uncool, and
which, I mean, like,
so
the ultimate queer
narrative
narrative is like, you know, that kid in secondary school and primary school who like begged to be brought to the library and you know, really hoped to be able to find more books, and, you know, had to be given a library card when they were younger. Sorry, an adult's library card when they were younger, etc., etc. And then
bingo
gets to college and
a bingo card you can fit
bingo
out
card,
there,
and then gets to college and just like blossoms. It's wonderful. Good on Willow.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for her. She really is kind of like coming into her own there. Good. Sorry, just very briefly, we'll probably talk a little bit about Riley and that kind of stuff.
Riley's arrived. He's cute as a button.
He is, but he says to Buffy at one point during the middle part of the episode where she's got on their downturn, oh, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. You're Willow's friend, right? And I thought that was very, very interesting.
It's so offensive.
Yeah.
So brief note, we are watching these on the PAL region DVDs, so they are widescreen. And yeah, this was shot for widescreen to some degree. So there's some shots where you can see, like, you know, there's emptiness in the wide shot, and that's fine. There are other shots like the one in the library where they're using a very wide angle lens, like some sort of fisheye-esque lens, or broaching on fisheye, and because of how wide it is, the shot, you can just see the camera lens.
You can see the frame of the mechanism, essentially.
Yeah, and it's so jarring. So hopefully that doesn't keep going too much. Yeah. There's also, like, the opening shot had like extreme vignetting, which is where the corners of a shot are very dark compared to the rest,
like an old-timey photograph.
Exactly.
I don't feel like we're gaining anything for that screen real estate.
Nah, I don't think so either. But I'm fine with it. I'm not going to get too worried about it, you know?
Yeah. That'll be our character.
Exactly. Let me. Do you want to do some Buffy Bits, Joel?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So we have a brief appearance of Joyce in this episode when Buffy goes home. We see her room's been filled with crates, but Buffy makes a reference when she is buying her books in the college bookshop that hopefully her mother has a funny aneurysm when she sees the bill, which bring aneurysm obviously being how Joyce unfortunately leaves us eventually. Yeah. Otherwise, you pointed out that what Willow asks Riley about is Professor Walsh's specialty, which is a form of operant conditioning or psychological operant conditioning.
Operant conditioning, yeah.
Yeah, but psychological conditioning, which being her specialty, which is obviously what she is actually doing, not just within the initiative to the experiments, but to Riley and his co-workers as well. His team.
Forrest, is that one of them?
Forrest is one of them, yeah, and there's another third one that
what did we see him in recently?
No one ever remembers.
We saw some Forrest in something recently. Anyway, grand. So sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No, we can go back and forth.
Cool. So Oz does say in this episode, it's a madhouse, which is obviously which is obviously a Planet of the Apes reference. And I just couldn't get off Phantom Menace there for a second. Planet of the Apes reference. Funnily enough, Xander made that exact same reference in season 2, episode 1, which also was written by Joss Whedon. So it could just be a coincidence. Or
could just have forgotten that he said it before.
Yeah, it's just funny that both of them were in the season openers. Xander does make a reference to Phantom Menace.
Very topical reference.
Yeah, so he's saying, he's that famous Yoda quote where it's like, fear leads to death, death leads to life, life leads to happiness, happiness leads to love, love leads to hate, Hate leads to fear. Fear leads to the dark side.
It is a fascinating thing, Brian, to see you go into this quote full barrel when I knew 100% you had no idea what it was.
Well, near to Xander, but then he turns it into a Scarface reference, so that's okay. Oh yeah, did you read this about Sunday? She was originally scripted to be the her storyline was going to be that she was a previous Slayer who got sired. Yeah. And that Joss Whedon apparently ended up quite liking the character and liking the dynamic that she brings. I didn't personally, but whatever. And wished he hadn't written her out or written her death. She does have a very like fab pose when she gets staked. Yeah, she just kind of like puts her hands on her hips and she's like, oh, this is I'm so over it.
I'm so inconvenienced by this. Yeah. I have always thought that it was exceptionally unusual the way that so few previous Slayers are referenced and so few recent Slayers are referenced. It seems like if nothing else by season 6 they would have tapped into that or something.
We should have heard about what happened to the last Slayer. That could have been a great episode.
Yeah, it's fully unconfirmed in any canon who the previous Slayer was. I think there was one reference to it in one of the kind of non-canon novels, and it seems kind of trashy, to be honest, as in like not well written, so I don't really count it. Okay, do you have some fashion notes? Yeah, I actually think overall everyone's fashion has improved for the most part compared to previous seasons. I would note that Riley's kind of floppy hair,
it's not great.
No, it's very indicative of like kind of like there was the hair of the time. It's like NSYNC. I was going to say also Jordan Catalano in My So-Called Life, Jared Padalecki, and is that the one I'm thinking of? The one who was also in Gilmore Girls, who was in Supernatural?
Yeah, Jared Padalecki.
Very distinctly that hair as well, yeah. That's not great. Buffy wears a not very flattering kind of pinkish leather crush jacket at one point, which Sunday specifically rags on her about. Which isn't a great look.
Willow is wearing I don't like Willow's outfits in this episode mostly. I'm not sure about her hair. I think her hair is too like new season. Anyway. But she's wearing a very long maxi skirt at one point, and I was just like, it reminded me of that TikTok I showed you last night where
someone's maxi skirt got sucked into the wheels of a shopping trolley at Kmart, and they were just trying not to laugh, Brian, as they were crouching all fours, desperately trying to hide their butthole while someone tried to help them. Brian has new sound cancelling headphones, which he has gotten through a legitimate purchase. And occasionally I will see him silently racked with laughter, and I know that despite me assuming he was asleep, he is actually crouched over a TikTok.
Anyway, Sarah Michelle Gellar does look wonderful in this episode. She looks great. She looks she's grown up very well.
Speaking of Sarah Michelle Gellar, just very briefly, as we have been for 40 minutes, there's a new animated He-Man Master of the Universe TV show on Netflix being released.
Presumably due to the success of She-Ra.
Yeah, presumably, with a rake of popular voice actors, including Mark Hamill as Skeletor, but one of the characters is the voice of Sarah Michelle Gellar, which I'm excited about because you don't really see her in a lot.
No, you don't. So the guitarist of the band, they're a real band, and I forgot to really look into it, but he has a Jaguar guitar, which is cool. Jag guitars they're great guitars, very of the time, to be honest, very 90s. But he's wearing like a patchwork top. It looks like he's like wearing like a normal shirt, but like it has like fissures all the way through it, or like standing up pieces of like fabric.
Ruffles, whatever.
It was disgusting. Xander is wearing the worst outfit I've ever seen him in, so I'm not sure where you're coming from with that. He's wearing a brown cable knit.
I think so. Oh yeah, he does look terrible. Yeah,
sweater vest over a orange jumper.
Yeah,
he looks like trash, and he's also from this point forward he doesn't wear short hair again, which is a shame because longer hair doesn't look good on him.
Yeah, his short hair was nicer for certain. So yeah, that does look bad. That does look like a randomized sim, to be fair. But I don't know. I just feel everyone's maybe it's like recency bias, but as people start to approach modern styles of dress, it's like more palatable to me.
Fair. Do you want to do Death Count?
I do. So death-wise in this episode, we have Pedro Pascal as Eddie, sired by Sunday and then dusted by Buffy, R.I.P. We have a couple of the Sunday's crew, which I think most went unnamed in the episode, but one called Rookie, who was dusted with a crossbow by Willow at incredibly prejudicial close range. Jerry, who was staked by both Xander and Oz, and Sunday herself, who got a very disregardingly thrown stake from Buffy.
From the opening credits.
From the opening credits, yeah. So all vamps.
Yeah, true. Well, except for Eddie, who...
True.
Okay. What's your... I'm going to give my rating out of 10.
Okay.
I'm going to give this 8.5 Dadaist pep talks out of 10.
Okay, really? 8.5?
Yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable. I thought it was quite good, quite fun. It doesn't suffer from the season 4 stuff that has going on for it. It was a fun new exploration of something. I like Xander being better. I like Willow being in her own, coming into her own. Buffy experiencing sadness, so it was good for me. Yeah, I liked it.
Great. I would probably give it a 7.9 concussions. I thought it was good. I definitely enjoyed it. It was better than I think I anticipated coming off the high of graduation day. I don't have any specific criticism of it. It just was a little awkward in places. And I have so much time for growing pains, and I have so much patience for that. But the reality is that 8 and above is for something that's going to ignite me a little bit, and this didn't do that.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it. Good episode.
Okay. How do we do this, Joel?
The
Cordelia Chase.
The greatest game, Cordelia Chase. So we're going to do the Corgi Chase, and we're going to talk a little bit about, very briefly, about Angel, which we're going to start watching concurrently alongside this.
Yeah, so we watched season 1, episode 1, City of...
City of. As
on
Angel. City of Angels.
Oh, yeah, I know. I think we watched it last Monday or Tuesday. It was good fun.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mess.
Definitely. So yeah, I think I'll briefly kind of summarize what I thought were kind of the interesting bits for Buffy Boys. So really it's trying to establish the distinction between Buffy and Angel. A lot of shocks outside in the sunlight, which
a lot of awful jump editing.
Yeah, flashy, very I would say those who are prone to any kind of photosensitive epilepsy should take extreme care in watching the show. Right. It's actually ridiculous. Something for these early episodes was they tried to redo the vampire makeup to make it look more scary, essentially, for Angel, which they dropped after this opening episode because it just looks awful. It looks like something from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action film. One of the vampires who staked in the opening scene was Sawyer from Lost.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And we also have Angel using these kind of ridiculous, basically Assassin's Creed risk stakes, which were so derided that they're actually used as jokes later in the show. Whenever a new Vampire Slayer is introduced, it's they use that as who's this fucker coming along now. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it's a good dynamic to it. Cordy is there.
Cordelia was great.
She is great. She brings immediate energy. She asks Angel.
It's kind of sad. She's very lonely, and she has no she's no acting jobs coming to her, and
she basically gets taken advantage of by a vampire, etc., etc.
But she very quickly realizes that it's a vampire. She's like, wait, no sunlight, creepy,
no mirrors,
creepy old dude, and a decor that looks like it's from the 70s. You're a vampire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She says to Angel, "Oh, Angel, I didn't expect to see you. Are you still grr?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's not really a cure for that," which is not true because he finds 2 separate cures over the course of the show. And they introduce a new character, Doyle, who is played by an Irish actor, Glenn Quinn, who
he was also in All in the Family.
He was in All in the Family for a long time. He was also in Roseanne as one of the daughter's boyfriends, and it is referenced. So basically, he leaves the show after 7 episodes, Angel, because of what was often discussed to be problems on set in terms of his behaviour and his working relationship with the crew, and dies soon afterwards from a drug overdose.
Heroin overdose,
which is obviously awful, and was referenced in. I was just gonna say it's referencing Roseanne as well. His character dies.
Oh, is it?
When they revive that show, but he's good. I enjoy it. I enjoy his character of Doyle. He's a
genuine Irish accent, which is always handy.
He's a genuine Irish accent. He's replacing Whistler, who is the character who is only in Becoming in Buffy, who gave Angel his original mission from the powers that be. He plays a very similar role and gets visions from the powers that be. And they're basically trying to set up this idea that they help the helpless, and that Doyle gets visions. He doesn't know when they're going to come, and Angel goes and solves it. There's a lot of enjoyable elements to it. David Boreanaz can definitely carry a scene and carry a show.
Yep.
But it feels so much I feel like if I was a network executive, I might cancel this show.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a pilot where at the end of the episode, it's well, we've all come from different places, but now we have, you know, a pitch to the network, and it's very intentional.
Yeah. Lindsay, who's a man, he's one of the people who work for Wolfram Hart.
Wolfram and Hart, yeah.
Wolfram and Hart, sorry.
Who are the law firm, who are kind of the villains of the show, yeah.
But he looks incredible. He looks really, really, really attractive. And Angel does throw someone out of a skyscraper, and he burns while falling, because he's a vampire, which is hilarious. But also, there just is a very odd amount of sunlight in Angel as a TV show.
Yeah.
Like, for a show that's about a vampire main character, it feels like a much brighter show than Buffy.
It feels like it has a similar lighting to like Sabrina Teenage Witch, the college years, that kind of just really well lit thing. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot to love about Angel.
What would you give the city of out of let's go whole numbers, and we need one. Let's have one rating for the whole thing. Let's see.
Sure. Fangs.
No, that's awful, Joe. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. How many failed feminist apologies? Or sorry, what's a phrase? It was failed feminist.
What are we talking
about? Cordelia Chase, failed feminist gesture.
Yes.
So how many failed feminist gestures out of 10 would you give it?
I would give the pilot episode of Angel City of maybe a 6.9 failed feminist gestures.
We're going full number, whole numbers.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. 7. I'll round it up to a 7 now.
Great. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, fair.
Failed feminist gestures.
I think it does very well for a pilot, and I think the tone of sex actually does carry through the 5 seasons. Mm-hmm. So it has that going for it. It's just not Buffy.
Yeah, sure.
To start off with. Something which I will move on very swiftly to dusting this episode. Something I want to return to next week, which we didn't discuss this week, is a brief reference in this episode to Take Back the Night.
Yeah, sure.
And what I actually think are quite pertinent themes of kind of campus safety and assault, and Buffy, I thought specifically being running and being very vulnerable from assault on the campus and all that, right. Is not a unintentional or pertinent thing to discuss. So I want to come back to that next time. Yeah.
Okay. We'll be back next week for our living conditions, which I love as an episode. It is awful. I love it.
Okay, so that's us for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Going into season 4, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards, like Buffy, things are getting bigger, but we're ready to deal.
We didn't even talk about her falling through the skylight, which was such a brilliant comedic scene. And when Xander says, "Oh, do you want to do some reconnaissance?" And Buffy's like, "You mean do some paintings and stuff?"
And sculpting. He's like, "No, that's the Renaissance." It was a great line. It was very, very funny. Lots of good things to talk about on the show, which we'll talk about more of next week on season 4, episode 2.
Tell your what?
Living condition. Huh? I was getting to that.
Okay, cool.
I was getting to that. Tell your friends, tell your TAs.
Oh, okay. And
we'll see you next time on Buffy Boys.
See you next time, Buffy Boys.
See you.
Long appeal.
Tschüss.